Hey, Emma, have you seen the car keys? I called out to my girlfriend Emma while still patting down my pockets. I saw them on the nightstand this morning. Hurry up, we need to leave soon. I nervously started pacing around the apartment, checking every corner. Today was a stressful day for both Emma and me. We were moving out. Our now ex-landlord had informed us his plans for the apartment had changed, and we needed to vacate. Since our lease agreement had long since expired, we couldn't argue. We had only 2 weeks to find a new place and leave. Moving wasn't new for us as a couple. We'd done it multiple times, given my job as a traveling construction project manager. In short, I oversee the setup and maintenance of major construction projects across the country. Often, my company sends me to different states to manage projects. As you can imagine, the process is time-consuming, and my presence on site is crucial. Sometimes, projects take months to complete. Because of this, Emma and I often have to relocate to various cities. But this move was sudden and unplanned. Work was tough lately, with delayed paychecks, and rent in our current city, Chicago, was steep. We had no choice but to look for a small one-bedroom apartment in a more affordable area, outside the bustling city. For the past week, Emma had been glued to her laptop, tirelessly searching for rental listings. The constant hunt was exhausting, but she eventually found a decent option. The listing was posted by Walter Peterson. The attached photo showed an elderly man with a quirky hat and twirled mustache. He was renting out a one-bedroom apartment in an old 5-story building in Indianapolis, Indiana. The apartment was near the last stop of Bus Route 4, which conveniently passed through downtown. After weighing the pros and cons, Emma and I decided it was our best option and called the number provided. "Hi, Mr. Peterson, my name is Emma. I'm calling about the apartment. Could you tell me more about it?" "Hi, Emma. Sure, there's not much to say. I used to be a teacher. My late wife, Nancy, and I both worked at the same school. We each received our own apartments. She passed a few years ago, so now I rent out her place, which is right next door to mine. The previous tenants just moved out, so it's available." "Why did they move out? Was something wrong with the apartment?" "Oh no, the apartment's fine. It's just old, you know. They moved to another city for personal reasons." "Got it. When could we come to see it?" "Anytime you like. I'm home most of the time, so just come by." Emma and I drove to see the apartment, though see might be an overstatement since we were already packed with our belongings. We'd handed over the keys to our old place earlier that day. In the courtyard, elderly ladies sat chatting on benches while kids played hide-and-seek. The area was surprisingly well kept with neat flower beds, freshly painted curbs, and trimmed grass. Though the building was old, it didn't look run down. Many windows had been upgraded to double-pane glass, and parts of the facade were insulated. I parked our old Ford Focus near the third entrance, where the apartment was located. Getting out, I opened the door for Emma. "Madam," I said playfully, offering her my hand. After a quick hello to the grandmas on the benches, we entered the building. Reaching the second floor, we saw door number 47 but didn't knock. Instead, we rang the doorbell for apartment 46 next door. After a short wait, we heard shuffling behind the door. "Coming, coming," came a muffled voice, followed by the sound of footsteps. The door opened, and there stood Walter, the friendly old man from the photo. His mustache was just as twirled as it appeared online. He wore typical elderly attire, slightly worn and outdated. His thin-rimmed glasses sat low on his nose, and he peered over them to look at us. "Oh, welcome. You must be the new tenants," he greeted us, extending his wrinkled hand. "Yes, that's us," I replied. "Can we take a look at the apartment?" "Of course, follow me." Walter stepped out, locking his door before pulling out a ring of keys. After a brief shuffle, he found the right one and unlocked apartment 47. The door creaked open to reveal a dark hallway. "Ladies first," he said, gesturing gallantly. After Emma entered, he motioned for me to follow. Inside, Walter flipped a switch, and a dim yellow light illuminated the hallway. To the right is the kitchen, straight ahead is the bedroom, and to the left are the bathroom and toilet. The apartment's furnished with essentials, and some of the previous tenants' items are still here. There's cold water now, the hot water gets turned on in the fall. The light works everywhere, though the bulb in the toilet needs replacing soon. Looks like most of the bulbs could use an upgrade, I muttered, glancing at the dim ceiling fixture. So, should we sign a lease, or do we skip the formalities? If we can skip it, let's skip it. First and last month's rent? No, you seem like good spouses. Let's do monthly payments at the end of each month. Well, we're not married yet, though it's about time, Emma chimed in, taking the opportunity to drop a hint. Why don't you come over for tea later? We're neighbors now, after all. Sure, we'll stop by in the evening. We need to unpack first. Sounds good. Make yourselves at home, Walter said before shuffling off, leaving Emma and me to settle in. If I'm honest, the apartment felt eerie. Compared to the photos online, it looked quite different in person. Likely, the pictures were taken years ago, before the first tenants moved in. The first thing that stood out was the dim lighting. Every room was poorly lit with faint bulbs. Heavy curtains covered the windows, adding to the gloom. Second was the smell, old and heavy, a mix of sweat, food, and that distinct mustiness found in old homes. Emma walked to the kitchen window and opened it with a creak. I did the same in the bedroom. Once we drew back the curtains and opened the windows, the atmosphere improved significantly. We spent the entire day unpacking our things. Lost in the routine, we completely forgot about the promise we made to Walter. Only when the clock struck 9 p.m. did Emma remember. Oh no, he's probably waiting for us. He's probably asleep by now. It's late, and he's an old man. That's not right. I'll grab some cake and cookies from the store, and we'll stop by. He might still be awake. Fine, if you have the energy to go to the store, go ahead, I replied. Visiting Walter wasn't appealing after such a tiring day. All I wanted was a shower and bed. 15 minutes later, Emma returned with a bag of treats and called from the doorway. Come on, let's go. It won't take long. I changed my shirt, stepped into my sneakers, and joined her at the door. Oh, I thought you'd forgotten about me. Come in, Walter greeted us warmly. I stepped inside, where a dim bulb lit the corridor. The apartment was unusual, filled with antiques. Some pieces looked valuable, while others seemed like junk. Wow, I said aloud, glancing questioningly at Walter. I'm a collector, Walter began without prompting. You see, it's a hobby I picked up in my old age. Let's head to the kitchen, and I'll tell you more. I just put the kettle on. The kitchen was equally eccentric, adorned with old paintings, copper dishes on shelves, and a myriad of clocks and books. Clocks were everywhere, 2 on the walls, 1 on the windowsill, and another on the fridge. Books were scattered in every possible spot, on the bread box, the table, near the stove, and inside the kitchen cabinets. Their covers looked ancient but were in remarkably good condition. We sat down at the table as Walter poured tea into cups. Emma cut the cake we brought. Even the dessert plates he provided were unique, made of dark clay and hand-painted with golden patterns. Where did you get all this? I asked, abandoning etiquette for curiosity. Oh, son, I told you, it's my hobby. I get up early, head to the local flea market, and you wouldn't believe the treasures I find. I buy the most interesting ones for myself. We spent most of the evening listening to Walter's stories about his various finds. Eventually, after all the tea, nature called, and I asked if I could use his restroom. His response was strange. You'd better go back to your place. I've been having plumbing issues, and the toilet flush sticks. It's best not to mess with it. It sounded like an excuse he made up on the spot. I chalked it up to old age. Maybe he hadn't cleaned or felt embarrassed. Taking the hint, I nudged Emma that it was time to go. We finished our tea, exchanged a few pleasantries, and moved to the hallway. I slipped on my shoes first, and while Emma tied hers, I noticed the bathroom door. It was wrapped in plastic wrap, with sponges stuffed into the gaps between the door and frame. There was no handle, instead, a small hole marked where it should have been. In contrast, the adjacent door to the toilet looked normal. No plastic, no sponges, and the handle was intact. We said our goodbyes to Walter and left the apartment. The first night in our new place was uneventful. After a good night's sleep, Emma and I got up and went about our respective days. The workday was exhausting as usual, with endless demands and checks from management. By the time I got home, I felt completely drained. Thankfully, Emma had come back earlier and had dinner ready, warm soup and tea with cookies. Exactly what I needed after a tough day. I'd planned to replace the dim light bulbs around the apartment with brighter ones, but I was too tired. I collapsed into bed instead. At around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by an odd sound. Scratching. Then faint tapping. And finally, the creak of a bed. I opened my eyes and reached for my phone. What on earth could be making that noise? Listening closely, I tried to pinpoint the source. The noises seemed to be coming from the bathroom. Curious and annoyed, I got up to investigate. As I approached the bathroom, I noticed something odd. Behind the washing machine, the wall looked uneven, as if it was concealing something. Pulling the machine aside, my suspicion was confirmed. There was a small, square wooden door painted the same green as the walls. There was no handle, only a small hole where one might have been. Kneeling down, I peered through it. What I saw froze me in place and shifted my entire perspective on our seemingly quirky neighbor. Instead of a bathroom, Walter's space resembled a library or a storage room. Tall shelves filled with ancient books stretched from floor to ceiling. Various chests, cabinets, and countless antique items, teapots, clocks, coins, tableware, and even clothing, were scattered throughout. In the middle of the room, a symbol resembling a pentagram was drawn on the floor. It had more points than usual, and at each point stood a lit candle alongside various objects. My heart sank as I recognized some of the items: my pack of cigarettes, Emma's hairbrush, my tie. Personal things we hadn't even noticed were missing amidst our fatigue. In the center of the symbol sat Walter, his back to me, holding a large book. He was chanting softly, sometimes switching to a loud, firm voice. "Emma, we need to leave now," I whispered, barely audible. We backed out quietly and returned to our room. Emma was on the verge of a breakdown, trembling and crying silently. I placed her on the bed and grabbed my laptop. My hands shook as I searched for any information on the mysterious collector. Eventually, I found an old forum thread from 2006. People were discussing a man named Walter Peterson. Unbelievably, he hadn't even bothered to use a fake name. According to one user, he had recently moved into the cursed apartment 47. They described feeling drained, noticing items disappearing, and experiencing an inexplicable attachment to the place. Whenever they tried to leave, overwhelming anxiety would force them back. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together. Walter wasn't just an eccentric collector. He was something far more sinister. The stories from our janitor were true. He was binding people's souls to his antiques, using rituals and personal belongings to trap them. By the time I finished reading, it was 4 a.m. Walter's chanting had stopped. Emma had calmed down and was watching me from under the covers. I closed the laptop, but I didn't tell her everything. There was no need to amplify her fear. Sleep was out of the question. I started packing our essentials. At dawn, I woke Emma gently. "We're leaving this place," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my inner turmoil. "Okay," she replied, her tone hollow. We carried our bags down to the car. As I started the engine, Emma suddenly said, "We can't leave. We have to go back." Her voice was trembling, and I knew exactly what she meant. The same anxiety was gnawing at me with every passing mile. "We have to keep going, Emma." "This fear isn't real," I said, gripping the wheel tightly. but the anxiety only grew stronger until it was unbearable. My hands turned the wheel almost involuntarily, and we found ourselves heading back to the apartment. As we neared, the oppressive feeling lifted slightly. Resigned, I pulled into our usual parking spot and shut off the car. Back inside, I reopened the laptop and showed Emma the forum. We need to destroy everything, ours and the previous tenant's belongings. It's the only way to break this, I said. How? We'll burn it all. Night by night, we'll take things from behind the door and destroy them. Let's try it, she agreed, her voice filled with a mix of fear and determination. That night, we waited until midnight. Walter's secret room was eerily silent. Carefully, we opened the small door and removed a few items, a sand timer, a scarf, and a music box. We burned them on the balcony at dawn, ensuring no evidence remained. The following nights went much the same. Each time, we grew stronger and felt less tethered to the apartment. Walter, however, seemed to deteriorate, his appearance becoming more frail and ghostly. One night, as we prepared to take more items, we noticed light flickering from behind the door. This time, Walter was inside, chanting once again. Armed with a knife from the kitchen, I burst into the room. Walter turned slowly, his eyes hollow and lifeless. He lunged at me, but I fought back, destroying the last remnants of his collection. As the final item, a large ornate mirror, shattered, the trapped souls were released, and Walter collapsed. By morning, we packed up and left for good. Our horrifying experience in apartment 47 was over, but I couldn't help but wonder, was it truly the end?